Greetings, vinyl community, and welcome to VC Friday. And I want to start this week with a shout out to our good friend DJ Trish, the darling of the vinyl community, because I received from her Christmas mix on CD. And I have not listened to this yet because it's too early in the year for me to do Christmas music. I have a policy of not voluntarily subjecting myself to Christmas music until 2 weeks before Christmas Day. However, of course, the world being the world, I've been to the local Walgreens to get my transit pass renewed, and yeah, the Christmas music is out there already. Not Thanksgiving yet as I record this, but the Christmas music is out there. But this is going to be delightful. And one thing that I'm really looking forward to hearing is track 8 on here is Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross doing Deck Us All with Boston Charlie. And if you don't know what that is, that's a version of Deck the Halls with Boughs of Holly as it was linguistically mutated in the Pogo comic strip. And it was a long-standing tradition. And Pogo, I love Pogo, one of the greatest comic strips ever. I love comic strips in general, but Pogo was absolutely at the top. Great stuff, incredibly smart and clever and funny and cute and surrealistic. But Deck Us All with Boston Charlie was their Christmas song that every year would reappear at Christmas time and get mutated even farther. And it started out as Deck Us All with Boston Charlie, Walla Walla Wash and Kalamazoo, Nora's freezing on the trolley, Swaller Dollar Cauliflower Oligaroo. See, now I've subjected you to Christmas music already, and it's only Good Friday. Good Friday, Black Friday. Good Friday's a whole other thing. Never mind. And then that's followed on track 9 with one of my very favorite Christmassy items, which is Duke Ellington doing selections from the Nutcracker Suite, which just swings like hell and is so much fun. So, hooray, thank you so much, Trish. Now let's get on to the vinyl. So I want to start off with this album from 1986 on the Dambuster label. This is An Hour with Cecil Sharp and Ashley Hutchings. And we know Ashley Hutchings as a founding member of Fairport Convention and Steel Eye Span, and the creator of many albums over the subsequent years that commemorated the British folk music and folk dance traditions. He was behind the Morris On series, and in particular, an album that he alludes to in the liner notes to this album, Rattlebone and Plowjack, and there's also its companion album, The Complete Dancing Master. These came out on Island in the 1970s. This is with John Kirkpatrick. And those are both albums that are primarily musical, primarily presenting the dance music of rural Britain and the folk song tradition. But they are illustrated or interspersed with these spoken word parts that sort of shed light on the traditions or put them in context. And this album is kind of the reverse of that, because it's more of a spoken word album with musical interludes. It does begin and end with music, but it's primarily a version of a stage show that Ashley Hutchings created, where he portrays the great folk music collector Cecil Sharp. Cecil Sharp lived from 1859 to 1924, and he roamed the British countryside looking for folk music old people who remembered the old folk songs that had been passed down through generations and that were dying out. And he wrote them down, or in some cases made recordings using cylinder recording equipment of the day. But he didn't do that so much because he felt it intimidated the performers, and also because it was very heavy to lug that stuff around the countryside. He also came to America to study the descendants of the British folk songs in Appalachia. So a very important figure in preserving the folk music and folk dance tradition. He was a co-founder of the English Folk Dance and Song Society, whose headquarters to this day are called the Cecil Sharp House in London, and they, maintain the library of his collection. They hold events, concerts, and honors to people who are perpetuating to this day the British folk music and dance tradition. But this is, like I say, more of a spoken word album. A little bit of just Cecil Sharp talking about his life, sometimes talking about something that seems totally irrelevant to, his work. But Ashley Hutchings is clever, and he does kind of tie it up with a little bow at the end, taking something that sounds like it has nothing to do with music and applying it to Cecil Sharp's findings. The music is provided by Martin Carthy, who does the vocals, Richard Thompson, who's there on guitar only, and Dave Whetstone, who plays concertina, one-row melodeon, and guitar. There are also actual recordings from cylinders recorded by Sharp or by Ralph Vaughan Williams, the great British composer who is also a folklorist, and assisted in the collecting of these songs, and some that I think are more anonymous. So it opens with one of Sharp's own cylinders, and it's really hard to hear. It's definitely not an audiophile experience, but after we hear Ashley Hutchings doing the first performance as Cecil Sharp, we get to hear Martin Carthy doing a properly recorded adaptation of the song. And so it goes through the album. We hear some vintage recordings of these tunes, and then we get to hear the present-day lads doing their versions.
There is a shop in my father's yard, it's called the Merry Girls, sir. And if young men are wanting when they can, then they cannot when they will, sir. They cannot when they will, sir.
Hello, my name's Ashley Hutchings, and I'm going to tell you a little about Cecil Sharp.
Now here's an album I'd been hoping to find for a little while. This is the 1973 debut album by Roy Wood's band Wizzard, Wizzard Brew. And this is a British copy with the cover painting by Roger Alexander. American copy had a photographic cover instead. I always assumed this was Roy Wood's own art, since he is also an artist, but apparently not. And this is so weird and very fun, very noisy. It's a blend of 50s style rock and roll with jazz, freakiness, and just weird jamming and psychedelia and strangeness. It's very unique sound. It's just sort of rooted in that early rock and roll tradition, but it goes off on so many bizarre tangents that It's a little bit hard to categorize. Now, this is the band that Roy Wood formed after leaving Electric Light Orchestra in the middle of the recording of their second album. And he took two of the ELO members with him. So he's got Bill Hunt on keyboards and some brass instruments, and Hugh McDowell on cello and moog, both early ELO members. And he also has Rick Price on bass, who was previously with Roy Wood in The Move before it evolved into ELO. And they are all joined by the two sax players, Nick Pentelow and Mike Burney, the two drummers, Keith Smart and Charlie Grima, and the Cowbag Choir. While Roy Wood, the notedly modest instrumentalist, plays vocal, electric and acoustic guitars, sitar, cello, bassoon, baritone saxophone, string bass, B-flat bass tuba, trombone, recorders, and percussion. So you might get the idea that the sound on this album is a little dense. And that's very much the case, because the sound is thick, the sound is full, and the sound is noisy. It's an extremely weird production. It's got all those different instruments clattering away, but there's also this very strange, pinched, oddly recorded vocal sound that is so notable on these Roy Wood productions. And it is his own production, with arrangements for brass by Bill Hunt along with Wood. And there are only 6 tracks, because some of these are quite long and jammed out. You Can Dance the Rock and Roll starts it off very much in that retro 50s rock and roll tradition. Meet Me at the Jailhouse, which was one of the more bizarre, collage-like, maybe even a little Zappa-inspired, maybe more than a little Zappa-inspired, takes up most of the first side. And then we get this oddball marching band thing, Jolly Cup of Tea. Then 2 more kind of more rock and roll flavored pieces, beginning side 2, Buffalo Station, Get On Down to Memphis, and Got a Crush About You. And then another long piece, Wear a Fast Gun, which was actually intended for Electric Light Orchestra, but would not have fit in with the direction they were going. So definitely an oddball release from Roy Wood. This is on the Harvest label. Apparently there should be an insert or a printed sleeve with lyrics and or credits. That's not in this copy, but it is very fun to have. I picked up something very different from the Mexican progressive rock, rock in opposition style band Nazca. From 1986, their second of two albums, Estación de Sombra, or Season of Shadow. And this is music in a very dark chamber music vein, very similar to the likes of Universero. The band is a five-piece, no guitar. The lineup is Alejandro Sanchez on violin and baritone violin, Cuauhtemoc Novello on percussion and effects, Carlo Nicolau on piano and violin, Carlos Ruiz on bassoon, and Jorge Gaitan on bass and viola. So very much a chamber ensemble with a rhythm section. Great, great stuff. Very much, as I say, in that Henry Cow, Universero Art Zoid vein. Next is an album on the Nonesuch Explorer series, Indian Street Music, the Bauls of Bengal. The Bauls are a mystical sect, a syncretic culture that combines elements of Hinduism and Islam. They refer to Krishna in the texts of the songs, but they are also clearly related to the Sufi tradition. The LP does not have a lot of information about the circumstances of the recording, exactly where in the Bengal region it was recorded and in what year. Discogs says that this is a 1973 release, and I'm sure that's incorrect. I think this has to be earlier than that, both by the catalog number and the fact that the liner notes, one of the few geographical clues they give is a reference to the country that is now East Pakistan. Well, if this were 1971 or later, they would refer to that as Bangladesh, not East Pakistan. So, not sure exactly when it was recorded, let alone released, but very cool vocal music, devotional, but in a kind of slightly mischievous way. Not a solemn treatment of the religious grounding. The liner notes call it a bardic tradition, and they make the unlikely, to me at least, comparison to Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen. So we have the Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen of Pakistan, or Bangladesh rather, with the vocals accompanied by the kamak, which is a kind of drum with a string attached that you twang on the string to make the drum head excited. The kartal, a small bell-toned cymbal. The nupur, a garland of ankle bells. The ektara, which is an instrument. There are different instruments in the Indian subcontinent called the Ektara, which literally just means one string. And in this case, it's a string stretched from a percussion sound, so it's strummed rhythmically. And then the Dotara, which literally means the two strings, and that's more like a lute or guitar-like instrument. Finally, an album that combines music of the 20th century Spanish-born British composer Roberto Gerhardt and the British-born British composer Peter Maxwell Davies. Gerhardt's collages, also called his Symphony No. 3 for electronic tape and orchestra, and Davies' Revelation and Fall, a theater piece like so much of Peter Maxwell Davies' music, for 16 instruments and soprano, including some specially constructed percussive devices. I think we can see some of that on the cover, some special constructions designed, as well as the soprano going through a loudhailer. This was a mistake. Not that it's a bad record, but as I was listening to it and reading the liner notes, I was getting a sense of deja vu. Now, I knew I didn't have this, but it was awfully familiar, particularly with the Georg Trakl poem that the Peter Maxwell Davies piece is based on. This is the same album as this one, which I already had. This is a British copy on the His Master's Voice label. And by the way, these are from 1968. And this is the American version on Angel, both labels being part of the EMI conglomerate. So I've got a duplicate of this music. I have to decide which one stays in the collection and which one does not. I do certainly like this cover better, but we shall see. I think a lot of us have had that experience of accidentally purchasing something we've already had, and it's not the first time I've done that, and probably won't be the last. And that's VC Friday for this Record Store Day Friday. If you're out doing the Record Store Day thing, I hope you find everything you're looking for. And if you're in the USA, I hope you're recovering from stuffing yourself yesterday. And I will talk with you again next week. Be well. Bye-bye for now.
This song collecting is very thirsty work.
Got anything in the fridge, Richard?